Hey everyone, welcome to the VO Boss Podcast and the Boss Money Talk series. I'm your host, Ann Ganguza, and I'm delighted to bring back our resident money boss, Danielle Famble, to the show. Danielle,
hey, Ann.
Yay, welcome. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Well, Danielle, I bought a new lipstick for the show.
Ooh.
A new lipstick. And those of you that, the new red Boss lipstick, those people that know me know that I'm all about my lipsticks. And I talk about my lipstick brand, and I talk about, I use that. I actually use my lipstick and my colors for my branding for my business. And I started to think, well, okay, can I expense this lipstick? Right? Can I expense this lipstick? And so I chatted with my accountant to find out if it was possible to do that. And you know what? It is. So okay. I am so excited that I can now put lipstick and, we all know about these headphones. I was like, yeah, I know I could have expensed these headphones. It's a business expense. But guess what? This lipstick is too. And I think it's important for bosses to understand a little bit, I think, more about, we talked in our last episode about how important education was to the bosses. It's important to educate yourself on the basics of, let's say, bookkeeping for your business. Like, what sorts of things do you spend money on? What sorts of things, and how do you categorize them? I think that's an important aspect of bookkeeping. What are your thoughts on that, Danielle?
Oh, yeah, that's really important. It's important to know how your business is working, and bookkeeping is sort of the daily ledger of what money is coming in and going out for your business, and knowing even the basics of bookkeeping. In our last conversation, our last episode, we talked about outsourcing and the bookkeepers or people that you might have on your team, which they may be doing it, but you as the VO boss should understand even just the basics of bookkeeping for your business. So when I spend money on this lipstick or these headphones or a new microphone, these are expenses that can be expense for my business, and what are the categories that you can expense things in your business. I recently bought a ticket to go to another one of the voiceover conferences, and so I was thinking, okay, how am I expensing this? What account am I using for it? Making sure it's in my business account, and it's going to be expense for continuing education. So I know, the different categories and what you can expense in your business.
And I think it's so important because before I actually had an accountant and I was trying to do this all on my own, and I'm like, well, all right, at least I learned that I needed to have, we talked how important it was to have that separate business account. But then all of a sudden it was like, all right, I need, what are my expenses, right? I just started throwing everything and then it would always ask me, what's the category? And I'm like, oh, I didn't think about what are the categories that are useful in your bookkeeping for voiceover. And I thought, wow, there's equipment, there's because it can't just all be under equipment. And I'm like, but my internet connection, how do I classify that, right?
Subscriptions,
exactly.
Source Connect. Even I pay for extra storage with Google with my Gmail. That kind of thing can be expensed. The people that you work with. So we talked about, the bookkeepers and the CPAs, paying them for their services, working with professionals, so professional fees. There are so many things. That's what's great about running a business, is that you get to make money and then you can expense all of these different things, and then you're taxed on that. It's completely the opposite for as a person. You get taxed on the money that you bring in.
Right.
And then anything else is sort of just like deductions. But like the running a business it's really amazing. That's why I love getting into the weeds about money and finances and bookkeeping, because once you learn how to sort of not play the game, but kind of play the game, you can really make your business work for you much more efficiently. So learning about what it is that you're trying to do and making sure by being educated through a CPA or just finding, education on your own, making sure that you can expense that appropriately for your business legally in a tax, efficient way, you can do a lot, because we we use our bodies for our business. The chair that I'm sitting in my studio is it's a expensive ergonomic chair that normally I would not have ever purchased. But I'm in this chair for hours, and so back support is really important. So that was part of the furniture of my office space.
And even medical that isn't covered by insurance, right? Medical expenses, because like, oh, is my Peloton, is that an expense for my business? And I love what you said about it. It opens up, knowing these things, right, and understanding, the basics of what can be expense, what category am I putting it in? Because when I first started, right, I all of a sudden thought, oh God, there's categories. And then I didn't really categorize them like, I'm going to say properly, or I didn't quite know what categories to create. I mean, but in the end, when you look at, your profit and loss statement, which is something that's so very basic to any accounting, right? I would look at the number and I'd say expenses, and it would be one big lump sum. And I'd be like, well, what did I spend my money on, right? And so that's where I think the importance of being able to categorize things really comes into play. And the fact is that when about, categories and things that you can expense for your business, it opens up the door of so many possibilities. It allowed me to confidently say, all right, I can do this knowing that I'll be able to expense it for my business. And I think it helps me to actually go forth more confidently, and also be more willing to try new avenues to grow my business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the confidence that comes from the education is second to none. And I will say the best place to get that level of education for your business, for the business that you, VO Boss, are running, not my business or Ann's business, but your specific business, is to go to the person who has the knowledge about the numbers of your business. It makes no sense to expense everything, and then at the end of the year, it looks like you made no profit. Because again, the idea of running a business is to make a profit. It's not just to break even. We want to make money. That's why we're here.
And by the way, if you report to the government that you've lost money for over 5 years in a row, they're going to start getting suspicious, and then the audit will come. And by the way, I've been audited twice, and I'm not ashamed of it, because I wasn't, there's no foul play there or anything like that. I mean, literally, it's just when you run a business and you make money, they start to, they get a little bit interested in it. And, you can't have any red flags show up. And if you're going to be expensing everything and not showing a profit for a certain amount of time, then it might get a little bit suspicious. So you really need to work with someone, I think, that has an awareness of, what's in the realm of reality, so that you're not necessarily taking advantage, but also knowing I literally, even though I have my accountant, I literally purchased Rocket Money for last year, because I had so many subscriptions and I lost track of them. And that's like the big thing now is, everything digital is, you're buying a subscription to it. I had subscriptions I forgot about, right? And so I paid, of course, a subscription price to use Rocket Money. And then the funny thing about it is that if you do Rocket Money, they'll go and they'll find all your subscriptions. And then ultimately you can even say, at the end, I'm like, oh gosh, do I really need to pay $7? I think it was $7 a month. Do I need to pay $7 a month to Rocket Money now? Because they found all my subscriptions. They also offer to reduce the amount of money for your subscriptions, because they'll go and negotiate with the companies to get a better rate. A lot of times you can say, you know what, I mean, I just can't afford it, I'm getting ready to cancel, and then they'll renegotiate with you. But you can also renegotiate with Rocket Money and say, I can't afford the $7, and they'll say, well, what do you feel is fair? And so I said, all right, I can pay $3 a month. And so guess what, I'm paying $3 a month.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So but I've already paid them for 2 years, and all of a sudden I realized down at the bottom, I was thinking about canceling, and then they're like, hey, why don't you pay us what you think is fair? And I said, all right, well, I can do this. But suffice to say, it's just one of those things that, it helps you to really identify where your money's going. And so categories to me seem to be such a fundamental part of, basic accounting and bookkeeping. And so what are some other, like if you look at a profit and loss statement, like I know some people, their eyes are maybe glazing over. Profit and loss, it seems so formal, but what sorts of things are we going to be looking at when we see a profit and loss statement? Like what's important for us to know as business owners?
The main thing with a profit and loss statement is it really is sort of the name of it. Profit, how much came in? How much money did the business make in this given period of time? Let's say it's a quarter or a month. And I've been receiving monthly profit and loss statements, but how much money did you make during this given period of time, and how much money went out during that same given period of time?
Inflows, outflows.
Inflows and outflows. How much came in? How much went out? I think it's really important to first think about how much came in, because you have a lot of control over that.
Yeah.
That could be how much you're quoting for your clients, how many jobs that you've done, what what your bookings are like. You have control over that aspect of it. And you also have control over the loss side of it. How much is going out? So things like your subscriptions, which for me, I will say when I really started like digging into my profit and loss statement, when I looked at subscription, I was like, well, what am I spending my money on? This is so much.
Crazy.
Just crazy. Apple, Google, Source Connect,
Internet
connections, all the things.
QuickBooks.
Yes, QuickBooks,
My account.
all of these different things. I mean, it's just like, I probably just named $100 just in that, So it's knowing what is going out. Subscriptions for me is huge. Also, sometimes equipment, but I don't buy a lot of equipment for my business that often.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I'll buy another microphone or an interface or an extra cable just in case. For me, and again, this is something that a VO boss can look at their business and say, what do I need for my business? And then you'll know, okay, this is the category and this is how it's going to affect my profit and loss. But normally, for me anyway, my business with the profit and loss, with the monthly expenses, it's really those subscriptions. And I think I love what you said about Rocket Money, where you can take a look and see, like, do I really need all these subscriptions? Yeah. And then you can kind of, you can tune what is going out on your profit and loss statement. Another aspect would be the people that you pay. So maybe your, if you have
absolutely
an assistant or a bookkeeper, or if you're working with a CPA, or whatever else that's going on. And it really is kind of going back to personal finance. It's kind of like looking at your budget for the month.
Yeah.
How much is going out for your budget every month in your
how much is coming in
home, and then how much is coming in. It's the same kind of thing.
So profit and loss, your profit, and then of course, what are some other, let's say, terms that you might see on a profit and loss statement? And I'm thinking like, expenses, right? Obviously, or inflows, outflows, assets. I know I see that term a lot. What do you consider it to be an asset in a voiceover, in a VO business?
So assets are anything that you own, that your business owns. I consider assets to be things like my booth is an asset. I could sell my booth for a certain amount of money, and so that's an asset. My microphone is an asset. My interface is an asset. Any sort of like business furniture, that kind of thing. Those are the assets.
A physical item.
A physical item, like what the business owns. I'm a physical item, but my voice is the business, and so I am an asset of my business as well. I mean, you can't sell me, but like I'm an asset. It's what your business. Yes, I license the use of my voice. I sell my voice, but. Really, assets are anything that your business owns, but those are things that may or may not show up in your monthly profit and loss. Well, they might show up in your monthly profit and loss, but for me, when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at expenses.
When I'm looking at my overview, I'm seeing assets in there. So that was just a term that I thought, oh God, assets. It just seems so foreign. You know what I mean? Because I'm not a financial person, so to speak. I mean, but I have to be a financial person enough to understand, what I'm looking at on any given, month or any given report a profit and loss statement. So I know another term that I've seen on my reports is liabilities. What would be my liability?
Liabilities would also be like your debt. So what you owe. For me, I put most of my expenses on my business's credit card, and then I pay that off at the end of the month. So I'm seeing sort of a rotating liability.
Yeah, I was going to say your credit card would be considered a liability then, right? Because that's something that you owe on.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, that's generally speaking what it looks like in this business.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one note that I'll say about I have a business credit card, which is, I think it's one of the best, in addition to that separate business account, having a business credit card makes it so easy. I have a business credit card and a business debit card, and it makes it so easy to keep track because, again, everything is like electronic these days, and so I can feed it in as a stream into my QuickBooks. And so the only issue I have, though, is I have a business American Express. Now, my American Express, in and of itself, that credit card categorizes things, but it doesn't necessarily categorize it as it comes into QuickBooks. So that's something that my bookkeeper or accountant will do to make sure that we know, okay, what was that, $100 charge, or what was that charge that just came through? So, I think that having if you can keep it simple, we talked about that before. If you can keep it simple, having a business card that you use just for business expenses, and that can include like maybe paying stuff online or physically buying like a new mic or going out and buying dinner for voiceover people during a meetup, right? That kind of thing. I will always use my business card so that can just go automatically into my expenses.
Absolutely. I do the same thing. My business credit card is through Chase. And what's interesting is that Chase will do its best to categorize things, but it's not quite right all the time.
Exactly.
And then bring it into QuickBooks, because I have QuickBooks automatically linked to Chase.
Yep, mine too.
It's not the same thing. So part of the basics of bookkeeping for me is making sure that I have done the homework of categorizing it correctly in Chase and in QuickBooks.
That's a good point.
Really, the person who's doing the QuickBooks more or less has in the past been my bookkeeper, but I'm starting to take more responsibility for it because my bookkeeper makes assumptions and will ask me about it.
Absolutely.
But I have the single point of truth because I was the one who swiped it. Sometimes I'm like, what was that? What version of Danielle swiped that card for that thing?
Yeah, and what is that? I'll always be like, what is this charge? I mean, maybe one thing I would say, bosses, it's so important to do when you do have a business card, a business credit card or a business debit card, is like really visit those transactions like frequently. Because there'll be a lot of times when it'll be fresh and you'll be like, I have no idea who that vendor is. Like, what is that charge for? And if you can immediately just kind of make that adjustment, it's going to be so helpful rather than waiting until the end of the month or, and then saying, oh my gosh, I have no idea who this vendor is. And then maybe you find out you have that subscription you've paid for 6 months in a row and you didn't need it. So I think it's important to always be checking those expenses all the time and looking at them, because sometimes, and I will say this as a girl who loves to shop, and I love to shop online. Amazon has ruined me. I'm just saying.
I'll tell you, same. Oh, same.
I need it now, and I need it. I need it now. I need it. Yeah. I need everything because Amazon seems to sell everything, and I need it before 24 hours. And so anytime I get something, this is a side note, but anytime I work through another vendor and it takes like 5 days to ship, I'm like, really? What?
Yeah, what is that? You don't have that 2-day shipping?
What is that?
What's going on?
And then when Amazon delays the order, I'm like, what? Like, I get angry. But anyways, I digress.
But you're making a really good point. And,
right?
And I'll speak from personal experience because this is something that I did not do for the longest. And I'm currently in the moment going through months, like 3 or 4 months ago of expenses because I didn't do it, even though, my bookkeeper will, but I'm sort of
It's like after
following
the
up
fact,
on
it's
what
like,
my bookkeeper did, because maybe it is or is not the correct
Yes.
thing to categorize. It's something that can be done at the end of the week, and it takes just a few moments. But
Yeah.
if you put a little bit of time into it more frequently, it will save you hours
Oh, yeah.
and
Of
Googles
checking
and
and
headaches
looking and
later.
calling. Yeah, I agree, and I don't do it as much as I should either. And it's just one of those things that when you have to go back and figure out, oh my God, what was that expense? So I think it's important, absolutely, that you are looking at your cards and your debits and outgoing expenses and of course incoming as well. There's also the other thing that I want to talk about is the fees, right? Because the fees are not something that aren't automatically handled all the time by QuickBooks. When you have I guess you call it a feed, your bank feed, right? It could be things coming in from PayPal. Well, PayPal takes a certain amount, a percentage. For transactions, Stripe takes a certain percentage. Everybody does. QuickBooks takes a certain percentage. You have to account for that in your bookkeeping. And that is an important thing to categorize, because maybe you think you're making $100, but in reality you're making $98.53. And so that becomes an important thing.
It's incredibly important too, because yes, you are not making the $100 to your point that you think you are, but that fee is a business expense. That fee is a cost of doing business, and so it does need to be accounted for appropriately. Now, does that mean that I am the person going through and marking every single fee? No, that is why I have eventually outsourced that to a bookkeeper. But I do need to know the difference between how much should have come in and these fees, because the fees are an expense. And those expenses do add up. So when you're looking at your profit and loss, it's like, whoa, what is this? You should understand that some of this is fees, some of it is Danielle swiping the card for whatever thing, maybe a subscription or maybe buying something for my business. But you should know the difference. And then that actually gives you the opportunity to decide and plan and budget for your business.
Oh, yeah.
So if I can see what's going on with my expenses, maybe I've been spending a little bit too much on subscriptions. If I can cut that back, then I can use that additional money to take a class or to do a coaching or whatever. It gives you the knowledge, and it arms you with like what you need to be financially responsible for running your business.
Yeah. And also it helps you to determine as well what to charge. Because sometimes when, I take fees into account, it doesn't mean I do believe that fees are part of being a business. So I'm not that one person who says, can you pay me friends and family? Because if it's a business, I'm willing to pay that. If I can get away with it, sure. Not paying that fee. But in reality, I'm a business. So I've come to accept that there will be a fee. And so if I want to, make it accountable, right? I'm going to have to pay that fee. So I might then, instead of charging $100 for the job, I might charge $125. And then I've accounted for that fee in my head, but I haven't told anybody that I'm accounting necessarily, right? I'm not, the company doesn't need to know that I'm charging $25 more, because I want to account for that fee, or whatever I decide to do. That's one thing, is being aware of those expenses as you're getting paid will help you to determine, right, your fair compensation. And of course, we always like to say that you are worth it. Yes, you are. So price yourself appropriately.
And I think being aware, it means really looking at like the data of your business. That's how you become aware. If you allow someone else to deal with it, then you're not really aware of what's going on with your business. And you can,
good point.
You're missing out on some opportunities for maybe charging more, or maybe how you can save money because you're spending a certain amount more than you should, or more than you've budgeted. That kind of thing. Absolutely. I think staying on top of the basics of the bookkeeping really kind of keeps you aware of what's going on in your business. And I'll say I've not done a great job at this in the past, and I'm learning from my negligence in the past is really that, like, if I can keep my mind and my eyes on the day-to-day expenses and profit in my business, that actually makes me feel so much more confident and competent when I am requesting or making a quote for a certain amount of money, or however I'm running my business. It's giving me so much more confidence because I know the day-to-day data of my business, financially speaking.
Yeah, it is absolutely important. And as I was alluding to before, being an online girl, like an online shopper, when I went off on that tangent of Amazon, sometimes, right, it's like a little bit of an addiction. It's like here, click, buy. And it's so easy. And again, it's so easy to not look. Right?
Yeah.
It's so easy to not look at your credit card expenses, or so easy to like kind of avoid it. And, you know, I'm that person. I'm willing to admit it. I mean, I've been in denial. I might have had a month or two where I was like way overspent. I shouldn't have purchased that. But, you know, I think keeping your eyes on your finances, it's kind of like, you know, I've been on this health journey, right? And before I wouldn't look at the scale. I did not weigh myself for a long, long time. And now all of a sudden, you know, when you're watching, right, it makes you become more conscious and it keeps you more on top of things. So I do believe it's very important for you to really check those finances, check the bookkeeping, and it'll really, like you said, make you feel so much more confident and so much more competent, right, in running that business, because you will have a handle on, okay, I know that I'm not really utilizing this subscription software anymore, so I can maybe give that up and then maybe invest in something else. So it really it really clears the path for you to grow. And I think that is one thing that is so important in our businesses, that we should always be looking for opportunities to grow. And financial anything should not be inhibiting us from doing that. If you can find ways to save, find ways to, you know, be aware of your finances and understand, oh, I can save something here, so that means I can invest more here. That's just going to give you a whole lot more confidence moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. And also, if you're not sure and you have questions, the best place to ask those questions, or the best person to ask those questions, is to the person who knows your business intimately and also what the implications are. So that would be an accountant, or that would be some sort of professional. It's not going to the Facebook groups and saying, hey, can I expense blah, blah, blah? Because what I can expense in my business may be different than what you can expense in your business. And my revenue and ability to expense certain things in my business can maybe withstand me spending a certain amount of money on a certain category. So my answer might be not the right answer for your business. So I think it's really important to educate yourself, but find the perfect person to educate you. And it's someone who knows your business. And if you don't work with an accountant already, find someone, have them look at the numbers of your business, and then they can tell you specifically the answer to your specific unique business.
And they can help you set up those categories, which we say are so important, right?
Exactly.
And then, so I would say absolutely, kind of to recap, right, your essentials of bookkeeping are to really keep an eye, right, on a daily, weekly, if you can, on a basis, on inflows and outflows. Understand your categories, and if you don't know how to categorize something, you can certainly talk to your bookkeeper or someone knowledgeable that can help you with that. And is it an expense? Yes or no. You can find out more that way, and ask someone that is this is what they do for a living. I mean, I'm a big proponent of that. And educate yourself on the basics of looking at a profit and loss statement, because I think that's going to be so important in helping you to really organize and make plans and strategize your goals for the future.
Absolutely.
So, another wonderful Money Talks with Danielle today. Thanks so much for joining me again. I'm looking forward to our next podcast.
Thanks, Anne. Me too. Yeah, I love it. I love talking money.
Yes. And a big shout out to IPDTL. You too can connect and network like bosses. Find out more at IPDTL.com. Bosses, have an amazing week and make sure to check those books. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.